Tough questions, new insights, diverse perspectives. Welcome to Questions of the Day with Fanuel Muindi.
All right, good morning and welcome to Questions of the Day at SigmaXi. I'm your host, Fanuel Muindi, and guess who's back? Well, it's Adriana Bankston. Adriana, welcome back to CivicSciTV.
Thanks for inviting me back.
So let's just get to it. You recently hosted a webinar titled Capacity Building for Civic Science Policy. Before we delve deep into it, can you tell us a little bit about how this webinar came about?
Yeah, so it's part of our special issue call for papers with SigmaXi and the Rita Allen Foundation. We have a bunch of outreach partners too. But the idea is to really think about and engage the next generation in thinking about the future of civic science when it comes to policy changes as well that we want to see, and really coming from the fact that scientists need to engage beyond the bench and how to change the culture in that sense. We organize these events prior to the call for submissions to incentivize potential authors to engage and learn from experts really in the field and what the latest information is. So this was one of the events that we did, our first webinar, one more coming up on September 5th. And the idea is to hear from folks who are in the field now and are experts about what sort of the latest in civic science.
Yeah, and so you had Erica Kimmerling, you had Andrea Lopez, and Jelana Sheets. And I had a chance to actually listen to this session. Fantastic, by the way. And for those who are watching and you don't know what we're talking about, the link is below. Do go there and listen to those insights. So, Adriana, you're the moderator. So give us maybe your take. What were some of the key takeaways that you got as being moderator for this session?
Yeah, so this, the way our events work, and this was really the first sort of setting the stage on civic science and of course thinking through the capacity building. We started with funding structures with Erica, right? So the central question is really how culture needs to change to incorporate civic science into institutions and other groups where scientists want to engage, but it's not a practice that's really welcome in some ways. It's something that needs to be incentivized more. So Erica brought up how funding structures need to change to incorporate some of this into training scientists, which is really a lot of the barriers. Go back to that, and if we can change that, that's a good start. We also talked about specific initiatives like Ciencia Puerto Rico, and also how they engage communities. So I encourage people to look at what they're doing. Jelana talked about some tools for engagement. So getting more practically down to if people want to engage in civic science, what kind of tools are out there. We also discussed how to measure impact of these initiatives, right? So when we think about culture change, we really want to see how, whether or not these are working, how we can measure that, and a little bit of discussion on that, evaluation of these programs too. And so I think that would help sort of the culture change if we can show that they're working on what that looks like. It was very focused on, or sort of the second part was related to education and training that we need in civic science, which again, institutions should incorporate some of this into their trainings that even early, talking about K through 12, undergrads, teaching students early about engagement in civic science. That is not something that's part of the curriculum, but that was a big takeaway.
Adriana, for you though, if I was to just put you on the spotlight for a second here directly, what struck out the most for you as you were listening to all these panelists?
I think one thing that was interesting is how civic science is defined, right? So we started with this, but really they pointed out that it's really dependent on the context and what they're working on. So it's difficult to have sort of a universal definition, but each panelist really brought a different perspective to this. And, civic science can mean all these things that all of them are doing, right? So they're fellows in civic science, either current or former fellows, people that have expertise in this, and they define civic science differently. So that was good to know because that's something everyone always asks, and it's not an obvious answer. Yeah.
Why do you think it's important to define this term, Adriana?
I think for someone like me who comes from science. I always think about this as a broader perspective of scientists. Really, being a scientist really isn't just being in the lab, right? So just incentivizing this practice across universities, I think, is important. Defining it, because I think that will help us hopefully engage more scientists in this field, and funders, right, and other stakeholders that were brought up too, because I think we're in a point where we need this culture change to happen, and everyone who wasn't in the panel and the ideas that were brought up are part of that change. So defining it is the first step, but then also all these other aspects that came up in the conversation.
Yeah. And so what is your hope? So this webinar is out there in the world. What is your hope? What stage do you hope it sets along this series? Because it is a part of a series, right? As you mentioned in the beginning. So
part of it is hopefully give some ideas to potential authors on what they can write on, because there's a lot of good content there, and the special issues broad enough that I think you could cover different areas related to infrastructure, incentives. All these things are important. I would love to see what the trainees think about this and what their views of the future are, because that's what we publish. So I think that's one plus for sure, that it gives a lot of material for people that want to write about this and learn from these folks that are in the field now. Okay, so I think one of the key goals there was to share these ideas, nuggets, if you will, right? To showcase the threads that are there. And in a way, I think, do you think you achieved those goals? Yeah, I think at the very least, we touched on a lot of aspects of the field, which I even was learning from them as they were speaking about what these different facets are of civic science, right? So that was the goal, to be able to bring out the different things that are within this space and how to think about it, right? And then hopefully will lead to some good submissions. Wonderful. Adriana, as always, thank you so much for joining us here at SciTV. Thank you, Fanuel.